Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah, not bad. I'm cold.
What? You got a cold?
I'm cold.
Oh, right. Why don't you put the heating on?
Too tight. I put it on about 10, I reckon. But, yeah, I'm not prepared to pay for it.
How much money you got in your bank?
Fucking loads.
Why don't you put the heating on?
I can't believe I said that. My brain immediately went, oh, that's going out.
Just put the heating on.
I'm really tight. I am
It's
tight.
bizarre. If you have got fucking loads, it's mental that you sit in the cold.
I haven't got
That's
loads.
an illness. That's an illness.
I've got a real problem with spending money, I think. Well, no, not on myself, I think. I don't know why. I just think it's... I'm always saving for a
But
rainy day.
you're getting old. Like, just put the heating on. You're going to be dead soon.
Yeah, I do think about that as well sometimes. I think, why am I...
What are you saving it for?
I don't know. I think I get a weird sense of pleasure going, I'll probably save myself £4 today by being cold. But then if Petra says, should I put the heating on? I'll go, yeah, go on then, yeah. But it's just me, mate.
Well, that's good of you.
No.
In the depths of winter. Yeah, go on, babe.
I don't mean I've got a lock on it or anything. I mean, I won't stop anyone else having the heat on. But I'm just saying.
So you've literally, the heating is not on in your house?
No.
Fucking hell, that's mad. That's mad.
I'm cold, yeah. Alright, I might put it on. No, I'm not going to put it on.
Because I imagine, like, what you earn at Countdown pays for the heating for the next 3 years, just the one panel show appearance.
When you say it like that, I'm like...
Just put it on. You might get fucking cancer in 2 years. And you go, all those years I sat in the cold.
I'll probably, if I do, I'm not going to
warm?
worry about the pissing cold.
What?
I said, if something bad happens, I'm probably not going to be thinking about the cold.
Yeah, but you go, why didn't I just chill out and put the fucking heating on to 16 degrees?
I don't know if I will. Even,
Who else is tight in your... Is it
just
I know what you mean, because
I'm not tight. That's right. Because I'm tight on myself.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, you are actually, because you'll buy a drink and stuff, and yeah, you are. You're on yourself. Why are you on yourself? Celebrate yourself.
It's like I'm harsh on myself. I'm happy to spend.
Oh, exactly. You buy presents and hey, come on.
I can buy a present
Get some
for
nice
myself.
clothes. Put the heating on. And treat yourself.
I can't buy nice clothes. I can't do that. That seems like a waste of money when you can. Anyway, I'm going to go and put the heating on. Hold on.
Are you?
Yeah.
I'm turning mine off.
It's sort of annoying me though. Okay, so. As we're talking to Dave, my room will heat up. I'm right next to the radiator.
I've been really
cold.
No, this year I've just been put the fucking heating on. Like probably the worst year to put the heating.
I know, because all the what suits are going up on there.
But you know, I'm not sitting in the cold. I'm nearly fucking dead anyway. At least have heat in my life.
I literally sit in the cold all day, and if Petra comes in, she'll go, bung the heat, and I'll go, yeah, go on then. And then the bit of me will go, oh, I should have done that earlier. I've been a bit fed up.
Yeah.
I love having the heating
on.
I
get not having the heating on if you're absolutely skint.
Yeah.
But you're like a Channel 4...
regular?
Yeah, how many other people have been on Bake Off just sit in the cold in their bungalow?
How many people? There's a quiz question.
I reckon none.
Imagine that's a quiz.
No one on Celebrity Bake Off sits in the cold.
Okay, Jeremy the ones I did it with, Jeremy Paxson, no.
No.
Toff from Made in Chelsea, definitely not.
No.
And Sally Lindsay, I doubt does. But out of the three, she's most likely to not have eaten on as much as the other two. How do we find out who has been on Bake Off doesn't put their heat on?
God.
That's something you can put on Twitter.
Oh.
Anyway, we got Comedy Dave coming on.
Yeah, we have. From the old Chris Moyles Show.
This is big for us. I was thinking.
Oh, this is honestly it's so exciting.
I was thinking about why we're having them on, and I was thinking about you talk about how you were on the golf course listening to them, and me and my best mate Simon Cotfield were flipping obsessed. We just wanted to be in that room with them, giggling.
I sort of just want to talk about wanting to be in the gang for an hour. I just want Dave to truly understand.
Yeah,
what
so do
I was
I.
going through.
I do. I was utterly rudderless around that time, and a lot of my focus was on what it might be like to be part of that. I just thought, that's not fair. They've got like their best mates are DJ, and they've got them on, and they just have a laugh. And I was really jealous of Comedy Day. I thought he'd just been given all this and hadn't done any work or anything. It's really unfair.
No, I was as well.
I was like, why isn't my mate?
Yeah, Chris Evans used to have some. Was he called John? Not John.
Will.
No, it's him. But on his radio show, he had this girl, like this Greek girl. And then this guy who's sort of 40 odd, and was like, what's he bringing to the table?
I could bring that little to the table.
And also, I wouldn't have been able to do that job. I just sort of sat there in silence. Silence Dave.
Whispering David Earl.
Nervy Dave.
Anything to say this week, David?
No. Oh, God.
Hopefully Nervy Dave will come back for other episodes of this.
The thing is, this one, because I really want Comedy Dave. I really want Dave.
Can we call him Comedy Dave?
No. I really want him to understand, but
I want to text Simon.
It's like someone coming to me now and go, I wish I was part of the Chatterbox gang. Talking about, get a life.
Oh my God. I'd love it. I'd love it if someone was fantasising
about being part of the Chatterbox gang. They sit in the warm.
Well, I don't.
No. Hey, beautiful.
Little bit of business. That's called a little bit of business. That's why I'm on. That's why I'm on chat.
And you're not, listener,
Mr. Cold.
Sado. Keep delivering your logs, whatever you do. Is it cold where you are, Brad?
Oh God, this hasn't just happened. This has not just happened. We've grafted at it, we haven't really.
I'm so excited.
Dave's here.
Yeah.
Oh my! So now my headphones are buggered up.
Oh really?
Oh shit!
I can hear you.
Well, it's not. Yeah, headphones are about me listening, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
You're thinking of the mic. After 200 episodes.
Oh, I can't hear Dave.
Can you hear me?
Hey!
Yes.
Hey!
Hi, Dave.
Oh,
Hello. How are you?
I'm nervous.
Yeah, we
Why?
are proper nervous.
Why? I'm nervous.
Oh, where do we start?
Yeah, but listen, you're people that I watch on the telly, and
sorry about that.
well, no, but I watch you people, and then you ask me to come on here, and I'm like,
Do you know what? Even your voice is making me shake a bit.
I know. I've just reverted to 24-year-old me being grumpy.
that was my job.
Thanks so much for coming on, Dave.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We were just talking about why we used to be obsessed with you.
Yeah, we sort of want to get you to understand how jealous we were of you.
It was the best job in the world.
We was honestly.
We had a couple of the shit.
I'm sort of unhealthily jealous.
Yeah. We sort of opened up a little bit earlier about how we struggled because we wanted to be where you were in the warm.
It was so much of it was having. Sorry, we're just
jumped in. Sorry, how are you?
Anyway, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Just got stuff to get.
Yeah. I've just got to say this before I lose my nerve.
Yeah, how are you? Yeah.
Very good, thank you. I'm very good. But no, it's weird, like you say about wanting to be there, because that was exactly how I felt. Because in as much as I used to listen to Chris Evans' show, and they had all the team there, and I loved that. Yeah. And I was driving to work, and I was stuck in traffic at the same point on that road for the bridge, doing what everybody does. And then this show was on, and there was Justin and Jamie and Holly Hotlips and Dan.
Holly Hotlips,
remember?
Oh my God, yes.
And I used to listen to it, and I thought, God, I'd love to do this. This would be the best job in the world.
Oh, wow.
And then, genuinely, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd get to Radio 1 or Radio anything, and then to actually be one of them on a show like that.
What were you doing?
Mind blowing.
Yeah, what was your job? What was your crap job when you were?
I was working at the time for a marketing agency, which was a job straight out of college that my cousin got me. So I left college in '95, and then I got a job with my cousin Colette for a little bit, just doing general office admin. And it was then that I was driving to work, and sort of wearing an ill-fitting suit from the '90s, with flex in the trousers.
Yeah.
And the highlight of my day was listening to the radio and listening to Chris Evans, which bizarrely, by the way, they only did 18 months on that show.
Did they?
Did they?
You think about that as being one of the real milestones in Radio 1 history, or I do at least. And then you look at it and you kind of go, they only did 18 months, which is nothing, but it was important, wasn't it?
It was. So what? How did you get to be in that studio?
Yeah, in the walls.
And how long did that take?
Yeah, so what was your next step? How did you go right? Because
we
just stayed in the car. We didn't get out of the car.
I was just on the lawn.
Still in the car.
Yeah, we just sat there going, wouldn't it be great? And then just sat on our hands.
What happened was I did a course at college in radio production and business management. Do you know what? You say that. It should have done in theory, but the problem was that at the time, these colleges and universities were chucking out tens of thousands of people with media studies degrees and radio degrees and whatever. And everybody's then sort of coming straight out of the door of university, all heading to their local radio station. And I still have a file in my mum's loft, which has got a rejection letter from pretty much every commercial radio station in the country, because I wrote off this, the same copy paste, dear sir or madam, or I'd find out the name. And this excitable 21-year-old, I want to come and work for you. And
right, Dave, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Where did you get the confidence? Because my confidence was shattered at 21, and I felt I just couldn't approach anyone. So I just said, I just can't imagine being 21 and going, I want to work for you. You need me.
What were you applying for? What was the sort of role?
Sort of anything
just
really.
Foot in the door stuff. Like, basically
absolutely.
shred the letters or whatever.
I'll come and do work experience for you. Right. I'll come and make the tea for you. I'll come and do whatever for you.
But with the aim to get on, be a voice on the radio.
No. See, that's
work in anything, basically.
Yeah, I never wanted to be on the radio. All I wanted to do was write, to be honest with you. The only thing that I ever had any confidence in terms of my own ability was writing. And to be honest with you, still to this day, 20 odd years on, is that I think that my writing is probably my best asset, I suppose. And that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be in a situation where I had an outlet to write for somebody else, whoever that might be. And that was the intention. So I sent off all these letters. I've got this file full of the same letter, basically. And after a while, all you do is you scan the second or the third line, and in the middle you've got the word "unfortunately," and that's all you have, that's all you have to look for.
Oh, so they reject you on line 4, do they? So they
line
go,
2 or 3.
Thank you for your wonderful letter, blah blah blah. But right,
but after a while, you see this letter, and the only difference is essentially a different letterhead in the corner.
Wow.
And you look at it and you actually don't see any other words on there except for the one that says "unfortunately," and then you just file it. And I've still got them. Anyway, so that didn't work out. And then I was working for my cousin Colette in this marketing company, and then a friend of my mum and dad's who worked for the BBC at the time had seen an article in the local paper in Reading, and my mum and dad lived not far from Reading. And it was a job that it referenced Chris Evans at the time, and it said something like, "Do you know your ginger loans from your Holly?" It wasn't that, because that doesn't make any sense. But it was like 2 Chris Evans show references, if you like. Yeah. And it was a bit like, come and work for us. And so I applied for this job, and I got this job, and it was it was for the BBC, which was brilliant to join this corporation, but it was an absolute monkey's job in terms of what it was basically listening to Radio 1 on high speed all day and picking out the adverts so that I could then do data input stuff for music copyright, if that makes any sense. So in other words, all of the music that gets played on the radio has to be paid for, and therefore if you have a trailer for Nicky Campbell's show at the time, or Mark Goodyear's show, or whatever it was, that has 3 seconds of Oasis and 4 seconds of Supergrass and whatever, and this is all got to be logged. And this was before the days of it all being online, and somebody had to do it. So that was my job, which was mind-numbing. But I did it at this place called the BBC Monitoring Centre, which is just outside Reading, which is a mad place, by the way. It's like something, it's used a lot during times of war and conflict. And ironically, at the time at which we record this, with all that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, it's probably very active. And it's basically this big old, it's like something out of James Bond. It's this big old stately home. And inside, you've got all these different divisions of people all listening to radio and watching TV from around the world. So you've got, you've got the Iranian department, and you've got the Iraqi department, and you've got the Ukrainians, and they're basically monitoring all of the output, and will be at the moment, no doubt, if I'm not giving anything away. And then this is sort of all government intelligence, right?
What?
I've probably broken several
secret acts.
Yeah.
But
but weirdly, within this building, up on the top balcony, there was this little room that had no relevance to anything important whatsoever, which is where me and this other girl sat. And we used to listen to Radio 1 on high speed and do this data input.
Weird job.
And it is a weird job, but it was working for the Beeb, and it was also very loosely working for Radio 1. So I joined there for £9,000 in 1996, I think it was, beginning of 96.
Wow.
And
at the golf course, 96, I was on 10.
Okay, well, so we're a similar ballpark.
I was a little bit better. I
was at Millbank Tower, and I was being paid weekly.
Okay.
Sure.
So I did that, and the general aim was the fact that I thought, well, I might get to meet somebody at proper Radio 1. That was the.
So did you feel you had your foot in the door then? You felt like I
felt I had a BBC pass, and I thought, well, that looks good at the age of whatever I was, 21, 22. And so I wanted to meet people at actual Radio 1, and in doing these reports, I did, because I sort of invited myself up and sort of said, oh, can I come and meet the person that I'm emailing and whatever, and got the tour around. And anyway, it had its objective, because then there was a job came up later on that year in about the October or the November, which I went for and I didn't get. I got down to the last 2 and I didn't get it. And I was gutted. And then off I went back to the monitoring centre in Reading. And then about a month later, another job came up for what they call a tech op, which is basically sitting in the studio doing knobs and buttons and whatnot. And so I applied for that. And because I just had this BBC interview for another job and got through it, they sort of said, oh, we've spoken to you weeks ago, so we don't need to do all that bollocks again. So you've got the job. Oh. And I literally moved from Reading to London in an overnight. It was like I finished one day on a Wednesday and I started the next day on a Thursday. And my job was to basically look after anything that came from outside of the building at Radio 1 and anything that was pre-recorded. So, for example, Mark and Large Show was the first thing that I worked on, which was brilliant, right? So I started working nights. So they were on 10 to 12.
Now you must feel like you're in there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, my job was a really simple one on the whole grand scheme of things, because they were in Manchester, and when they said, whatever, here's Carolyn Atkinson with the news, it's 10:30, I was the one that had to move one fader up and the other fader down, and then sit there and then wait until she kind of goes, Radio 1 Newsbeat, more in an hour, and then put it back up again.
That would stress me out.
Yeah,
I love the fact that all your jobs are now automated. Nothing you did.
I've been completely redundant. So I did that, and then, as I say, playing out things like the Essential Mix from Pete Tong, which was on tape, and Collins and McConey. Do you remember them? They used to do a show in the evening, and I used to get literally the little DAT tape, and used to put it in the machine, and then, as I say, when a jingle finished, I'd press play on this thing.
Did that feel like? Because I'm just thinking, imagine that. I think it would have taken me a long time not to get over the fact that I'd just made it go from Manchester to, you know what I mean?
I'd be giving it the big one in the pub.
And like now 3 million people have heard the thing I've changed.
It was scary, and especially, and you realise that responsibility. In those days, you used to be able to smoke in Radio 1, and there was a little smoking room on the ground floor where you could actually see into the studio. So if something was on...
It already sounds cool.
If something was on tape and you're thinking, do you know what, there's nothing happening now, literally I've just got to sit here for the next hour, so as long as I can hear that everything's fine, that's good. So I'd go next door into the kitchen, and I go in there for a fag, and I could see through if there was any issues, right? So then I'm in there, and for the length of a fag, 6 or 7 minutes, and then halfway through it all just goes, the radio's still on, but it all just goes really quiet, like half volume. I'm thinking, shit, what's that? What's going on? so I look, and the cleaner's gone into the studio, which I'm supposed to be looking after, and he's basically dusting down the mixing room, and he's knocked the master fader, which has gone down. She's completely oblivious, because she doesn't know, understandably, that happens to be powering all of Radio 1. So then I go legging back in, and at that point you sort of realise that actually, you know, you've got a lot of power in your hands. But it was
2 million
what
people turning on the radio.
But the one that was really scary was when where that job got really real was when there was things like Glastonbury and anything from outside of the building. So you've got, you know, John Peel and Joe Wiley in Glastonbury up to their knees in mud, and when you're trying to broadcast with electric cables and seas of water, a lot of stuff goes wrong. So my job's to sit there, and basically, if there's silence for any more than about 3 or 4 seconds, I've got to play something. So I've got music on standby, and so I've got to go there, because there's an emergency tape that kicks in after 10 seconds. So the idea is that I've got to try and beat that. So I sit there, and you know what it's like, even when you, especially now when you know, there's stuff online, and sometimes things can go for a couple of seconds. So I'm thinking, well, has it just gone? Is it going to come back again? So you sit there and it's gone, and you kind of go, no, still not back, and you look in 4 seconds, 5 seconds.
I'm really stressed.
6 seconds, and I'm thinking, and at that point, I sort of press the CD, and Ocean Colour Scene will come on or something like that, and then suddenly there's all these frantic phone calls between the broadcast duty manager in Broadcasting House, who's like, I've never been in there, but I imagine it's a sort of Dr. Evil sort of control tower. And then he's on the phone saying, I've got Glastonbury on the phone, I've got the engineers on there, what's going on, and whatever. And they're going, we got Joe Wiley back up. And so I kind of go, right, well, there's 2 minutes 42 on this record. So tell Joe Wiley that Ocean Colour Scene, the day we caught the train, is going to finish, and then she'll pick up the back of that, and then off we go, you know. Yeah. But then by the same token, there'll be other ones where the line might be down for 20 minutes, you know, and I've just got to play CD. I can't say anything.
No. Oh right.
It's not even like I can sort of go, hello, everything's gone wrong. I can't say anything. So all I am is a pair of hands and ears. So I just have to keep playing music and maybe put a jingle or put an advert in between just to break it up, and just desperately hope that it comes back soon. But
I mean, are you stressed in this moment, or
are
you?
Yeah, big time.
It's funny that But if you analyse it, what's the worst? I know in that job you get everything's really stressed, and you go, radio went quiet for a couple of minutes yesterday.
I know.
But I know, but it's easy to say. But I would be falling over.
It's stressful. It's stressful, and then and I did famously take Simon Mayo off the air for 20 minutes, which is something that does come back to me.
No,
which was
terrible.
I know. I wasn't awful at this job.
Did you not read the manual?
Here's the thing: is I had no technical training or experience whatsoever.
No.
It just happened to be a foot in the door, and I thought, well, I'll do that. I could have been an HR assistant or anything. I wouldn't have cared. I just wanted to get in the building.
When you were doing that job, were you actually meeting some of the broadcasters?
Yeah.
Did you bump into them? Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was, I remember the first day in the actual building, and I sort of walked in and I was really nervous, and I thought, God, because I listen to Radio 1 all the time, and these are all massive names, and we're talking about, as I say, Chris Evans was on Breakfast at the time. We've got Nicky Campbell, we've got Lisa Ianson, we've got Mark Goodyear, we've got Simon Mayo, we've got all sorts of people. So one of my first jobs on day one was to take this little mini disc down to the studio, and the mini disc had the trails on that the DJs had to play advertising the next people's shows. And again, before it was all on computer like it is now. And so my job was to take the disc down, and they used to have one for the morning and one for the afternoon. So this was lunchtime. I had to go and swap over the AM one for the PM one. And so I wait outside the studio, and Nicky Campbell's on the air, and there's a red light above the door when somebody's talking. So I'm nervously sort of waiting outside, and it kind of seems to take forever. And the longer I'm stood outside, the more nervous I'm getting. And anyway, the light goes off, and I sort of peer through the window and gingerly walk in, and I'm a bit like, "Oh, Mr. Campbell, here's your mini disc." And so he took the mini disc off me, and he put it in the machine, and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know whether I just walked out or whether I waited. Or do I wait to get a thumbs up? I don't know. I've never done this before. So
Nicky Campbell thumb. We're all waiting for a Nicky Campbell thumbs up.
So I stand there, and he puts the thing in the machine, and he sort of scrolls through all the different tracks. And then he presses eject, and he kind of goes, "It's the wrong fucking disc," and throws it at me.
What?
Right?
Oh.
At which point I duck, and this mini disc hits the studio window behind me. So I think I'm terrified. I think I don't know what to do. This is literally my first exposure. Oh, and unfortunately, the producer at the time, who was unusual to a lot of producers who ordinarily would have just put their head down and kind of cowered, and he sort of said, "Nicky, it's his first fucking day, leave him alone," whatever like this,
Nice.
So, which was great, and something. Yeah. And so I was sorry, Mr. Campbell. So I picked up the offending mini disc and I went upstairs and anyway swapped it for a better one. And then I think I got somebody else to go in with it. But it's one of those things where we ended up talking about this on the air loads of times, and Nicky got quite pissed off about it, thinking, well, did I do that? Did I, was I really like that? Anyway, subsequently, we've now, we now laughed and joked about if I run into him in the street or something, he always says hello and whatever. And I saw him in a cafe not long ago, and he still laughs about that. So it's sort of fine now. But it was a terrifying introduction into day one, and just thought, oh, that couldn't have gone any worse.
No. So how from there to you sitting on the breakfast show?
What's the
route for that. So I was in the studio doing all the, as I say, anything that wasn't live, if you like, right? So anything from outside the building, anything that was on tape, and then Mark and Lard. So I joined December '96. Mark and Lard were doing evenings at the time, and then they moved to breakfast. Because Chris Evans left in early '97.
Was that to go to TV, wasn't it? That's when he started doing.
Didn't he go to Virgin?
I think I think there was a crossover. He was doing radio and TV, because I remember. I can't remember at what point he went to Virgin at the first time. But anyway, he was around. It was around. If it wasn't straight there, it was not long after. So he left, and they put on Zoe Ball and Kevin Greening. God bless his soul, Kevin Greening. He was a genius, by the way, and much missed. And so they put them on breakfast, and Mark and Lard were obviously. Tell a lie. So got it wrong.
Chris Evans finished on breakfast. Then they put Mark and Lard on. Sorry, my fault.
Oh,
and then Zoe and Kevin took over after that.
They
right?
didn't do the breakfast for long, did they, Mark?
No. So this was the point. Yeah, I missed out a vital part in the story. So Mark and Lard moved to breakfast. I think it was February '97, and I think they only did something like, I don't know. I think they did till about the September or the October, something of that. But it wasn't long. It was months. And anyway, in doing so, my job then went from sitting in the studio picking my nose at night to sitting in the studio picking my nose early in the morning, because I had to be in to set up the studio and make sure the lines were okay and they could hear everything fine and blah, blah, blah. And they were starting at 6:30, so I had to come in at about 5:30, 5:45, something like that. And so in the July, Moyles had been signed from Capital. And so he'd taken over early breakfast, so the show beforehand, from Clive Warren, who was doing it. And so, there's glass windows between the studios. So literally, I'd be sat in a bubble, and Moyles and his producer and whatnot would be next door. So that was how we met. Was the fact that we just, we'd see each other every morning. And of course, I'd come into an empty studio and turn the lights on, and then everyone next door would kind of like look over and kind of go, oh, look, Dave's in. And as such, you'd pop in the door and say, morning, you're right, yeah, I'm fine, how are you? And blah, 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 blah. Anyone want a brew? And I go make a cup of tea, or whatever it was, and it's just part of that shared, it's a shared workspace, essentially, isn't it? And so that's how it worked. How long
before this were you sat in your car going to work listening to Radio 1? Was this like a year or two?
About a year or so.
So you're flying at this point. You're
18 months maybe.
You're shifting up the ladder.
You are.
You don't know it, but you're on rung 4.
I suppose so. So it was that, and the nature of Moyles and the nature of the Moyles show was the fact that everybody was sort of everybody was sort of part of the team in so much as anybody that was around from Hubert, who was a security guard,
might just included everyone
reference or whoever
that's when I see my jealousy
and so
I was like, why am I not walking past and getting pulled in for a chat?
I could be Joe, the guy walks past every day.
Walking past Joe's here with a little anecdote, and then my bit would grow, whatever.
And that was kind of it, because I would pop in, and then sometimes I'd sort of pop in and they'd sort of go, oh, come and sit down. And then I can't really remember exactly how it happened, but you start to become a very, very minor member of the team, I suppose, just by association.
So you got commented on in the
show.
So you sort of come in and go, oh, Dave's here, he's a producer on the next show.
What's going on, Dave? Or what's the weather like outside there? I don't know, whatever. It could have been anything. It was just something.
Physically be in the room at this point, or
right. But sort of stood at the back of the what's hi, morning? Does anybody want
Oh God, do you know what I remember?
Like, Dave, say hello.
Hi. Do you know what? Do you know what I remember? I've just remembered the bit where he'd talk to someone and then they'd be off mic and then they'd come on mic. So it'd be like, and then you go hello, and I'd be like,
how are you? I'm fine, thank you very much.
Oh my God, this is all flooding back.
Yeah, it is.
There's all this nonsense. So that was what happened. And then I guess another turning point was, so from that sort of, I don't know, stand in the doorway and say something.
At that point, Dave, sorry, were your mates starting to say, I heard you, mate, on the radio?
No, not at that point, because I guess the only people that were listening was long-distance truck drivers and stuff. Because this is, like, don't forget, this is off air at 6:30.
That's the graveyard shift in the nicest possible way.
It's the worst. It's the worst shift in the world, because it's worse than overnights, actually, because at least overnights is a late night. And breakfast is an early start. And early breakfast is just this mad twilight zone where you get up at 2:30 in the morning, get to work at about 3:30, and you do the show from 4 till 6:30.
And you've got to be up for it. That's mental.
That is mental.
So did Chris obviously have in mind, I want that breakfast slot, so I'll try and impress it there?
Yeah, absolutely. That was his goal. He'd worked his way up through commercial radio all around the country, and had sort of slowly gravitated closer and closer to London, and his last port of call before Radio 1 was Capital in London, which I guess was the next most prestigious place to be at the time.
How old was he at this point?
He's same age as me, so 22.
Jeez.
What?
I mean, it's when you look back on it now, it's like it's proper young, like proper kids. But the thing was, he'd been doing it. He started when he was 15 or 16.
Unbelievable. He was like Greg James said the same. He left university.
This is what baffles us about young confidence.
And Greg is still. I mean, what's Greg now? I don't know, his early 30s or something or whatever. So. I mean, really, really young. So Moyles was 22, 20.
That's amazing.
23, I think, when he joined Radio 1. And so we were really young. And as I say, I suppose the bridge between standing in the door and sort of being, or whatever, there was one day where Chris sort of said, "Oh, what are you doing later?" And I said, "Oh, nothing really, I don't know." And he goes, "Do you fancy a pint?" And I was a bit like, "Yeah, why not?" Because the thing was, we were working these weird, unsociable hours where we didn't know that many people in London anyway, and those that we did were working a normal 9 to 5. So when you're people whose job finishes at 6 in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, in my case, or whatever it was, you've got the rest of the day to.
I know. I used to think,
just dick around with.
That used to really annoy me.
Yeah.
It really did. But anyway, I'll come back to
so
that.
we'd go to the pub as soon as it would open at sort of 11:30 in the morning, and because we'd been waiting for the pub to open for hours. And so we go there and we had a couple of beers and we started talking about different ideas. And I'd showed him a load of radio ideas that I'd written when I was doing that really boring job. The first one, listening to Radio 1 on high speed.
Yeah.
And when I was doing this, or rather supposed to have been doing this, I would daydream about all sorts of different stuff. And I'd write these different sort of show ideas down. And I still kept them with a view to one day maybe being able to show them to somebody. Whoever that might be. And they certainly weren't written with Moyles in mind. They were written with whoever in mind.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I had these sort of folded up in my arse pocket and pulled them out. And he had a look at them and he sort of chuckled over a pint at the bar and he liked them. And I think that was the point where he sort of thought, we're on a similar sort of wavelength, in the same way that you two, obviously, whenever you first met, you would know very quickly that actually you're similar people. You've got a similar sense of humor, and it might work, and indeed it does. So that was that.
Thanks,
and then
Do you know what that means?
Say that again.
We'll clip that.
Don't hear enough of that.
So and then he said, "Oh, come and work on the show." And then I applied to work on the show, and then I did, and then
amazing.
When he said work on the show, what did he mean? Just come on and? But what did that mean?
You have to have a proper sort of position on. You can't just come on and
interview. So, but he couldn't just go, "Come on my show" at this point.
No, absolutely. He couldn't just go, "Oh, come and be a member of the team."
Yeah, that's what
you needed to sort of. So I then had to go through another interview process to move from one BBC to move from whatever the management department to the production department, which were run by different heads and blah blah blah, all within the same building, but a different job, right? So then I had to apply for this and have another interview and blah blah blah. And so I was applying for a job as what they called a broadcast assistant. So every radio team, in its simplicity, was made up of a presenter, a DJ, a producer, and a broadcast assistant. So a broadcast assistant was the bottom of the pile, or assistant producer, if you want to look at it in a more optimistic way. But the job is to make tea, answer the phones, research the guests, book tax, anything like that. Leaving the producer to basically concentrate on what's going out of the transmitter. So I started on early breakfast, getting up at 2:30 in the morning and working with Moyles on there, and would be answering the phones to long distance lorry drivers at 3:30 in the morning, seeing if they wanted to come on and play some quiz that we just made up 10 minutes earlier. And so you going through callers and kind of going, okay, right, Joe, I've got your number, we might give you a call back in a minute, line 4, David, hello, and do this whole thing, and then try and work out, having taken 20 calls or 30 calls or whatever it is, who the best two would be. Who sounds the most lively, who's going to be the most entertaining. And then you'd ring them back and you kind of go, right, we're going to put you on, Joe. Okay, right, stay there. We'll be with you in 20 seconds or whatever, right? Yeah. So it was all that. And I would, my seat was outside of the studio. My seat was in the phone answering room next door. But I'd sort of go in when, I'd get involved in a conversation and Chris would sort of say, "Oh, Dave, come in here a minute," whatever. And I'd come down and sit down for a minute, and then I'd disappear back to where I should have been, which was on the other side. Excuse me. And so I did that for a while. And then I suppose I was in more and more often. And so that role sort of increased accidentally, and it wasn't genuinely all the way through this. I've got no ambitions to be a presenter. I've got no, I'm certain people are like, I'm going to be on Radio 1 one day, and they have this self drive that they're going to get there. And I never had that. I was just delighted to be part of the team.
Do you think that's what made you sort of work? Because you weren't trying, you were just sort of doing, I suppose, what I mean? Just sort of answering, in a kind of natural way rather than this is my moment.
Yeah, I wasn't originating anything. I was just coming in and being asked a question or something, and then answering it, and then buggering off again. And I don't really know where I thought I was heading, because I was genuinely just happy to be to be there, and happy to. I suppose the only thing that I wanted to do was to write more, and be the person that would write that silly quiz, or would write that spoof advert, or would write that parody song, and just basically try and get more and more of my sort of silly ideas onto the radio. And I suppose that was the ambition. And the role in the studio grew sort of naturally, and it got to the point where I then had to apply again to then stop being that, and then to become a presenter. So I then had to move to being a presenter.
It's mad you have to keep interviewing. This is
actually there was no actually.
So you've done it for like two. How many years was that? Sorry. So from working outside the booth and coming in to applying to be a presenter, which is mental. How long was that bit?
A year and a bit.
So quite quick
you
again.
You can do it, but you still got to apply to be
part. Yeah, it was about a year and a bit, I think, and I had to apply, and then I they like their red
tape.
I was officially a presenter.
How did that feel? That must have been mental.
And this is pre-breakfast show. This is
still
early breakfast.
This is, I think, the end of early breakfast coming into, or actually no, it might have been afternoons actually, because we did afternoons for 5 years.
Yeah, because that's where it sort of took off, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's where.
So that was that's where it really happened. I remember
the afternoons. Yeah,
because it was afternoons from I think October '98.
Wow.
Until December 2003. And then we started the breakfast show in the January 2004.
Because the afternoons felt like, obviously, because with the best of the world, no one had heard you in the morning, so it felt like you were brand new. And so everyone was like, who the hell are these guys? Because it was like, it was fully formed, I guess. But it felt new to us, so we were like, bloody hell, they've hit the ground running. I remember it really clearly. It was like... It really sort of, everyone sort of took notice, didn't they?
Do you know what I've learned? I'm learning from this is you have to put the work in.
Yeah. So we're out.
Well, do you know what you say? You say that though, but I genuinely believe that all of this up until this point of the story, and then in fact everything that follows it was all just right place at the right time.
Yeah, right.
It was. I mean, this all goes back to my mum and dad's friend Jan seeing that article in the paper and saying that your Dave should go and do that job in Reading, whatever, and I did. And then I got to actual Radio 1, and then once you get in the door, it was just a case of, I don't know, just trying to stay there as long as you could.
But even that, I still think that takes some doing to actually see the job, go for the job, do the work. Find out other opportunities, do that, go. It's so easy to talk about and not actually do it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And moan, basically. Which is our safe space.
I'm not ambitious at all, though, genuinely.
No.
and I'm.
But you wanted out of something, didn't you? You wanted out of the humdrum of the.
I just want, I liked radio. I was a bit of a radio geek. I used to listen to Radio 1, when I was a kid, and listen to Steve Wright and stuff like that. And so I liked it, and I thought I don't really know what to do. So I thought it would be a fun thing to do, and I thought it might be somewhere that I could write. Yeah. Again, I just wanted to be the person behind the scenes, and and yeah, got in and I don't know. I kind of thought I might be here for a year or a couple of years, and at some point I'll probably have to grow up and get a real job.
Yeah.
And then that never really happened because I did 16 years at Radio 1.
So when you got the afternoon slot,
but you were presenting in the morning still. How long were you got the presenting job in the early show, right?
At the very end of the earlies, I think.
Right.
I think I might be wrong, or it might have been the beginning of the afternoon. I'm not sure, but anyway, it was around that sort of time.
Yeah.
And
when you got the afternoon slot, at what point did you feel like, I think we got something here, and people are talking about the show? And
did you get comfortable? Did you get comfortable in that role, or were you always sort of going, "I'm going to get called out"?
You get more comfortable, and I suppose once because as you're saying before, nobody heard you on early mornings. A couple of people did if they were up, catching an early flight to Tenerife or something, and in the car at 4:30 on the way to Gatwick, and they might have caught 15 minutes. But essentially, nobody heard it. And then on afternoons, suddenly it was like, wow, this is we're talking to a lot of people here, and then mates from school and college and stuff would start kind of going, oh, I heard you, and whatever, and
crazy.
And that's when it sort of went mad. And also, don't forget, this is before the days of social media, so you've got no instant sort of barometer on what's going on. So this is all really word of mouth.
And is it? Maybe I'm making this up, but I remember your show. I remember they talk about the numbers. Like your show was getting like ridiculous numbers for that slot it ever got. I remember that was talked about a lot in the papers and stuff, that your show was sort of, was that right? Like it was just doing these ridiculous numbers that the afternoon slot had never done before, and that was getting all the press and stuff.
Yeah, well, that was what was getting all the press, and I think just the nature of the show and the nature. I mean, the one thing with Moyles and with the show is that it was always going to be one or the other. It was Marmite. It was black and white, and I suppose nobody would ever say, yeah, it's all right. People would either love it or they would absolutely hate it. Which I understood, and I preferred that. I preferred that divisive. You were either one of us or you totally weren't. And I could completely understand and respect both sides of it. But no one kind of went, it's all right. I listen to it occasionally. And so I suppose that was also getting the press because I suppose we were quite edgy at the time in terms of what we did.
It was sort of quite rock and roll. It was sort of, that was what it was sort of spoken as, wasn't it? Like rock and roll, sort of. It
was fueled by the pub. I mean, it is. Right, when we look back
again,
now,
that used to annoy me. Honestly,
but it was.
I was getting cold on the mower, and you were sodding off at 10 a.m.
But it was fueled by the pub, and in the same way that
Did you really just stop work and go to the pub?
Yeah, pretty much
Talk us through that. I wouldn't do that now.
I couldn't do that. When we look back at like the 90s and stuff, and you think about things like Chris Evans, and you think about TFI, and you think about the music at the time, and it was quite rock and roll, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, you were a massive part of it.
I suppose so. And then so we'd finish. Well, when we were doing earlies, we'd literally be in the pub at 11:30, or we stood outside at 11:25.
Stood out waiting. Hurry up.
Well, because the thing was, we'd been up since 2:30, and we'd been completely. We had nothing to do from 6:30 in the morning, right? Yeah. So we'd had 5 hours digging around in the office, and 5 hours is a long time to wait for the. But you think, well, what's the alternative? Because I'm going to go home. I live with
fit.
Well, yeah, that wasn't
work on your upper body strength.
So we've been waiting for 5 hours for the pub to open, and then we'd probably leave. The walk from Radio 1 to the pub was probably about 3 minutes, but we would leave shortly after 11. Because we were so excited that suddenly it said at like an 11 on the clock.
What pub was it? Was it one of the pubs up Great Portland Street?
Yeah, it was
one of those lovely.
Groom.
I know. Yeah, that lovely old pub. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
Great pub.
So we used to walk into the Horse and Groom, and we knew the landlord was a Scottish guy called Ian, and so he'd see us, and literally, and I kid you not, and it was like something out of a sitcom. As he'd open the doors, and we'd walk around one side of the bar, and then he'd walk into the back of the bar, and we were heading for that back room of the Horse and Groom. And so as we were walking around, he would already be pouring us a couple of pints because that's what we did, And so we would sit in the back room and, I don't know, just sitting there and just drink and smoke. And then other people...
Till what time, do you reckon?
Well,
This is going to sound bad, is it? Like
this is going to sound bad. No, not that bad, but not far off. So people would come in at lunchtime, and people that we knew, and I don't know, other radio people or record pluggers and stuff like that would come in. And
so is this off when you had the breakfast show, or the?
This is early breakfast.
This is the early breakfast.
Right, yeah.
So we've got all day to kill, right?
Yeah.
So people would come in, and we'd have a couple of beers with them, and then they'd go back to their actual lives and their jobs. And then we'd
you
still
were the
be
constant,
there.
basically.
We were the constant, and then you've got this really sad dead time between about 2:30, 2:45 in the afternoon, and about 5:30, right? Where no one's in there except for us two playing pinball and smoking and drinking.
Actually sounds really bleak now.
It was
they were warm though. They were warm.
And then other people would come in after work, and then there would almost be this sort of, I don't know, like a bit of a refresher. It's a bit like, it's like a new day. And then other people would come in, and we sit with them for a bit. And then they'd go home to their wives and their families and their responsibilities at about 7 or 8. And then we'd still be there. And then I would leave about, I don't know, 10:30, and I'd jump on the number 73 bus and go up to Stoke Newington, where I was living at the time. And I would inevitably fall asleep on the bus and then end up in Tottenham or somewhere where I didn't live.
Oh, my God.
You know, and then you come back and have a couple of hours sleep and get up at 2:30 and do it all over again.
I'll be honest, I thought you were going to say 6:30 you finished, because I was doing the maths in my head, and I'm 10:30. So you're doing 11 hours in the bus. And you had a show in the morning. What time were you getting up?
2:30.
2:30.
She had 4 hours kip.
He was on the bus 2 hours.
No, because I was on the bus for 2 hours.
So you had 2 hours.
2 hours kip, maybe 3 at a push.
How did you not die?
Well, because we were what, 23, 24 and bulletproof.
Yeah.
And in those days, you could drink all day. You never put on a pound. I don't know. You just do it.
Yeah.
And so we did pretty much every day.
Wow. So when you got the breakfast show, how did that feel? I guess you're really used to it now with the afternoon show, but
because the after the show became
that was a massive step up.
Was it?
That
was
it?
Oh, okay,
yeah. I mean, more so than going from early breakfast to afternoons was a huge step up, because suddenly you were, I suppose, in the shop window and you were on daytime.
And you're replacing, and you're all the different people that have done it.
Yeah, I mean, big people,
massive.
In fact, I think Mark and Lard were doing drive time when we took over from them, and then they went on to mid afternoons, I think. So these are proper. This is a proper established act, you know, and we're going to be in their seat. So that was a big deal. But then going from afternoons to breakfast,
who did you replace?
Huge, probably a bigger move.
Who was before you?
Sorry, Sarah Cox.
Oh, blimey, right, okay.
So it had been Zoe and Kevin, and then it'd been Zoe on her own, and then Sarah Cox, and then we took over off the back of her.
Crumbs.
But this was massive, I suppose, because this wasn't just an internal move from one show to another. This wasn't like going from lunchtime to mid-afternoon, or from drive time to lunchtime or something. This was the Radio and Breakfast Show, which
Champions League. This is, isn't it?
This is legendary, and you get to sort of hold that mantle for however long. And so this was a massive deal, and it just felt, I don't know, just like I couldn't quite believe that we had it.
And you're sort of mid to late 20s at this point.
It's 2004, so I'm coming up 30.
Right. God. So were you nervous? Were the all of you nervous?
Do you remember the first sort of
I remember the first morning. I remember coming into the office on the first morning, and I remember, and they used to have this sort of quotes board in the office, in the production office, and there was a quote of mine on there that, because of this day, it was the only one that was on there, and it basically said, "We had the best hours in the world and we fucked it up." because drive time was brilliant hours, because we used to come in at about, I don't know, we'd come in about 1 and then go out for lunch, and then come back in again at about 2:30, and then do the show from 3 till 5:45, and then we're in the pub at 6.
That is amazing, isn't it?
I mean, those are the best hours ever.
Yeah.
So what you needed to do was be all right.
Yeah.
Basically, you need to
mid-table mediocrity.
We need to be more vanilla, guys.
Yeah, much like that football shirt on the wall behind you.
Don't go down that road. That's a depressing tale at the current time. But anyway, So the first morning there was all this new, new music had been made for the show.
Right.
And it gets a lot of press, doesn't it, when someone's taking over? It gets a
lot of press, and you know that the world's media are literally sitting there listening with notepads live because they're ready to write it up in the Guardian or the Telegraph or, whatever, like proper papers.
And had you planned to do kind of what you were doing in the afternoon, in the morning? Do you know what I mean? Was it going to... Yeah.
Well, we'd had about a month's worth of prep time between one show finishing and another starting. So we came off drive time in, I think, beginning of December 2003. And then we gave ourselves whatever it was, 3 weeks worth of kind of pilots and dicking around and trying bits and bobs out and getting everything ready so that we could literally hit. Because unlike anything before where we sort of knew we could just sort of open the door and go in and just sort of crack on with it, because of what you just said, because of the scrutiny.
Yeah.
And you know that everybody is sitting there with a pen and paper in their hand, and there will be a large amount of people who would be willing us to fail as well.
Of course.
Because we'd made a fair amount of enemies along the way as well. So there were those that were ready to put the boot in.
Yeah.
And so you had to make sure that you didn't give them an opportunity and that we were as polished or as good a representation of our show as we were. And that was the idea, really.
And how much prep goes into each sort of daily show? It feels really loose. I don't quite understand what work you put into it.
Did you do any work?
Not a lot, to be honest.
Really?
I mean, genuinely,
Incredible.
a lot of people. Well, but that is largely down to Moyles' natural skill of, in his technical skills and also his presenting skills and being somebody that is just a great.
What's his technical skills? What do you mean?
Yeah. So when you say skill,
what don't we have?
In terms of the way that he'd operate the machinery, the way that he would operate, you've got a mixing desk, and whatnot. But there's all sorts of technical skills in terms of he would take phone calls while we were mid-show, and then he'd be editing them while we were playing a record, and then it was like really mad headfuck stuff. Just technically he was brilliant, and Greg James will tell you this. I was listening to him on here with you, and he I think I heard him say that he looked up to people like Moyles and Scott Mills because technically at the time they were on a completely different level.
Right. I didn't think they did any of that. I just thought they just sat and went, right, what are we talking about? Well, not with the massive at the start, but
it was all in his hands. I mean,
That's
everything was in his hands. Everything that you heard
was that from basically doing DIY sort of Radio Luxembourg stuff or whatever.
I suppose. Well, I suppose. I mean, that's the way that radio used to be. Then subsequently, certain people came in and they had somebody drive the desk for them.
Right.
So then
is that
they would
more
have
common
somebody
now? Is that more?
It depends. It depends on who it is and where they work. I mean, there's still plenty of people that do their own knobs and buttons, and other people that will come in and just literally sit in a like a voiceover booth and just just talk. And
if you're in control, you've got that timing, haven't you? You can, really
and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just that beautiful timing of knowing when to knowing when to jump out of that conversation because that's the punchline, or knowing. Right, whatever. It's all to do with timing, and that's what he was so good at. So if you like, everything into pulling all the strings was something that he did, and he could just walk in and just do it without any prep and without any rehearsal and whatnot. And genuinely, the only bits of prep that were done for that show were. Obviously, guests had to be prepped and guests had to be written for in as much as, whoever so-and-so's coming in to talk about their new album, whatever, some questions and whatever would need to be written, and the producers would normally do that. And I'd write stuff like car park catchphrase, and I'd write tedious link, and that was it, really. You know?
Wow.
And you were able to get anyone on your show, weren't you? Like anyone. because you didn't have, the sky was the limit, wasn't it? Because they all wanted, because everyone wanted to be on the show, so that must have been flipping weird. Like the biggest acts at the time, and how was that sort of going? Oh look, there's the Gallaghers. Oh dear.
It was weird. It was, and as you say, it was in the same way that Graham Norton, I suppose, is now on the telly. That was the prime slot that anybody and everybody wanted to be on, because it was a huge stage. It was just, it's like a surreal dream, really. And still to this day, I look back and I never ever got blasé about it.
I was going to say, were there any points where you sort of stepped out and went, okay, I'm doing the breakfast show and I'm not that bothered now? Or were you always excited and appreciative? Yeah,
genuinely always.
Did Chris Moyles stay like that as well? Was he always sort of?
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I think because it had been this absolute goal of his since he was a kid. I mean, literally a kid, and pretending to be a DJ in his bedroom and recording the top 40 and whatever, and making up links and literally talking about primary school age, and then being on the radio professionally from the age of 15 or 16. Is that to then get to Radio 1 first and foremost, and then get to the Radio 1 breakfast show was the ultimate, as you say. It's like winning the Champions League, and so he didn't ever take that for granted. There was never any kind of like, it's a Radio 1 breakfast show. No, it was always a massive deal. Yeah, and something that I suppose once you get it, it's then a case of how long will you have it for?
Yeah, is that what you feel?
How often are the bosses kind of sticking their nose in, saying, "Don't do that. Can you do this? Don't like that."
You must have been left alone at some point, because it must have.
I think the longer we were there, the more that we got that. But which sounds weird, because you would think it'd be the other way around. You think that the longer you're in the seat, the more that you'd be trusted and left alone. But
the more they put stuff in. Oh, really?
But I think that was more to do with the fact that the longer we were in the seat, the older we were getting, and at the same time, the younger Radio 1 was getting. And this ultimately was the conflict, because, slight tangent, is that Radio 1, in order to justify its share of the license fee, had to be proved to do something different to what commercial radio was doing, right? So commercial radio stations in your local towns and cities would be broadcasting 25 to 45-year-olds, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And obviously they were after people that the advertisers would be interested in putting products in front of. And then Radio 1 had to prove that it was going after a different market, and the only place it could go was younger. So then they had to go after, teenagers and early 20s. And so in that respect, it meant that then, as we are mid to late 30s, we're getting a long way away from... So that
How
gap,
is that feeling? Like, how is that feeling? When
you know it's shelf life.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and you can feel this ceiling above your head, and feel you're getting closer and closer. And the thing is that all of our show was all based on references to telly and stuff, talking about the Dukes of Hazzard and the A-Team and Chips and all this sort of shit that we kind of grew up on. And then you get to a point where you're sort of being told that you can't do that, because the 80s didn't exist in terms of the audience.
Dave,
they don't remember anything.
Yesterday, we interviewed one of the riders on Kickstarter.
Did you? Oh, wow.
Yeah. You're the only person.
The nichest we could make that.
Oh, mate, honestly, that would really float my boat, because when I was a kid, I had a rally striker.
Because we need the numbers.
I will do. I had a rally striker, and when I stayed at my grandma's house, she used to have this sort of stepped garden, and so I used to pretend that I was on Kickstarter by going up and down these steps, and I used to get to the bottom of the garden, and then I used to try and see if I could actually get the bike around without putting my feet down, Kickstart. And I loved that show.
Oh, you're going to love that, Al.
Oh, I will. I enjoy that.
And the guy we had on came fifth in his heat. He's not the winner of Kickstart. He was fifth in his heat. He did not make it to the second day.
Hang on, how do you find that guy that came fifth in his heat?
With a lot of Googling.
We spoke a lot about Kickstart, and then someone just emailed, said, I did it. In fact, we had 2 or 3 people email. I was in it.
Yeah, a lot of old Kickstarters are available on a Wednesday.
Oh, God. Oh, so you're feeling your age a little bit. That must be. Does that put the pressure, or does that bring tension into the studio? And is it difficult to disguise on the mics?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's difficult when, I mean, we almost parodied it a little bit, and then we would start talking about, hey Dave, what are you doing tonight? Oh, well, I'm going out to see whoever, I don't know, N-Dubs or whatever, or, someone that we clearly weren't going to go and see at the Brixton Academy, or whatever. And it was, and so we used to play on it a bit that way, just sort of taking the piss, because we thought, well, we don't really know how else to handle it, and then we get in trouble for doing that. But yeah, I suppose it did, because we couldn't just be as much of ourselves as we wanted to be. But then again, the other side of it is the fact that ultimately our role wasn't to go on to the biggest show in the world and talk shit for 3.5 hours or whatever it was. It was actually to play music and be the flagship of this huge station. Yeah. And so there had to be some middle ground there, which often we didn't get right. I mean, especially when there was times when we would get in trouble, is that you should be playing 6 records a half an hour is about right in terms of what each show's supposed to do. And I think there was one show where I think we played 7 records all show in 3.5 hours. Yeah. Or might not even been that, and we've had times where we've opened the show at 6:30, where we should do a short link and then go into 6 records before the 7 o'clock news. And we've talked all the way up to the 7 o'clock news. In fact, over the news, and then gone to the news at something like 7:10. Yeah. Because we've just been talking bollocks about our day before.
That's what I liked about it, though. That's what I liked about it. I like that. So I've watched a couple of times. You've got there's the final show on YouTube. Yeah. I think. How was that? Were you prepared for it? Was that a sad day? Did it feel like the end of a...
Well, there was 2. Was it the one in the studio or the one in the radio theatre? Because we did.
Oh, in the studio,
right?
Yeah,
that was a proper last show. So the thing is, the boss. Well, I think Moyles had wanted to do like a big show busy extravaganza to go out on, but then at the same time we felt that we needed to do the proper last show in the studio and it to be in the right place. Because to have finished on stage in the BBC Radio Theatre would have been a bit of an odd way to end that many years. And exactly whose decision that was, I can't honestly remember. But it culminated in us doing the Radio Theatre show on the Thursday, as we then finished on the Friday. And the Radio Theatre show had Anton Deck hosting it, doing like a This Is Your Life and going through all these moments. And James Corden came out on stage and Davina McCall came out on stage and Gary Barlow was there and blah, blah, blah. And it was a big, proper show busy event that, looking back on it now, just seems quite surreal. Yeah. And then there was the big one, and the big one was the final day. And it was really genuinely emotional and very, very weird for all of us. Especially there was a point towards the end, and this is probably the bit that you might have seen on a YouTube clip, where we all had our opportunity to kind of say a few words.
I think I remember.
And, and I remember, Dom sort of going, well, when I first started this show, I had 1 child and now I've got 3. And, it's got me through this and it's got me through that and it's got me through the other. And, when you've done a show for nearly 9 years, as it was. Wow. A lot happens in your life, especially at that age, especially in your sort of, late 20s, early 30s or mid 30s and stuff. So it was just a really odd time, and just thinking, God, this is it. This is, and when that final jingle finishes, it's like, it's done. It's all over.
Wow. And that's when you get the little 21-year-old researcher coming in. You go, fuck.
yeah. Give me a mini disc. Has anyone got a mini disc?
No, it was weird, and and then began the beginning of the weird wilderness years.
So you didn't know what you were going to do next, did you?
Not a clue.
Really?
So I'm then 38.
Yeah.
And so I've been there since I was 22.
Wow.
So, I don't know what to do at this point.
And that's a fiddly age anyway.
It's a fiddly age anyway. You sort of need the one thing or the other. And I'm not, and genuinely, and at this point, I'm thinking, well, I've done well to kind of get in the door and bloody stay there for this long, but I'm not really trained or experienced in anything other than talking shit on the radio.
Which is why you're on Chatalogue.
but genuinely, it's like I don't have any transferable skills. It's not like it's not even like I've got a bloody scuba diving qualification, or I'm a part-time electrician,
I don't need to hear this right
or
now.
I used to be a fitness instructor. I've got nothing to go back to.
No,
so I basically.
And did you want to stay in that world? Because you've reached the top. It's like, well,
I kind of just wanted to stay. Well, I didn't. It wasn't one of those things where, and I know what you mean, is that once you get to a certain level, it's a bit like, well, I can't possibly go down because I'm so and so, and it wasn't like that at all. I genuinely, I felt the same at the end as I would have done after 1 year there or 2 years there, whereby I'd been really lucky and I'd had a laugh and I'd met some fun people and I had some great stories to tell my grandchildren. Yeah. Which sounds, a bit twee and stuff like that, but genuinely I felt like that. And so I came out and I thought, wow, what a mad, incredible ride, but a really good experience. And then my only objective really was just to do something that would actually pay the bills. And I genuinely, if I could have gone and driven a van or something and listened to the radio all day, driving bloody parts around the country that would have paid me enough to actually support my daughter and pay the rent and whatever and pay the mortgage, I'd have been happy with that. Genuinely, I'd have been. Yeah. I'd have been, and still to this day, if I could make enough money driving a van, I'd probably like to do that. Yeah. I like driving. I like listening to the radio.
Well, I've done it, and you get tired around 3 and start hitting the curb.
Yeah.
So it's quite. It's not what it's cracked
you start hating the person you're listening to on the.
But I'm quite easily pleased, though, David. That's the thing. It's like I don't have any great, brain that needs to be satisfied intellectually or anything. I'm quite happy, and as long as I can pay the bills, I'm a happy boy. Yeah. So, but I did spend about 6 months sitting in my underpants watching Homes Under the Hammer.
Did you?
In my flat? Did
you have a little moment where you're like, oh wow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because when you first come out, there's a bit of a. It's a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like it's a bit like stopping an oil tanker. It sort of carries on grinding to a halt for a while in terms of work, and there's bits of this and DJing it fresh as uni balls and stuff, and then doing some, because we finished in September. So I suppose the work was okay till Christmas, and then you got into the Christmas period, and then it was a bit like hosting corporate parties and all this kind of shit. And then it got to January, and then it was like wasteland. It was just like, wow, do you know what, this oil tank has completely stopped now, and there is
so strange,
there's nothing going on.
God,
there's nothing going on, and I kid you not, I'd get up in the morning at about, I don't know, 10ish, or I didn't really have anything to get up for. I'd get up in the morning, and I was living in a flat on my own. I'd split up with my wife, and my daughter was elsewhere, and so I'd sort of wake up in the morning and just, as I say, sit in my pants, watching Homes Under the Hammer and Jeremy Kyle, thinking, what do I do now?
I'd love to have seen an image of that, to be fair.
It wasn't a nice image. It wasn't a good image.
No. Oh, man, that's such a...
Yeah.
So, man,
and how long did it take you to sort of find a bit of structure and something to...
Probably about... it was probably about 3, 4, 5 months, something like that. It was sort of not quite the middle of the year, but not far off. So this is 2013, and so I'd gone to Chappers, who who obviously now hosts Match of the Day 2 and used to work with Scott Mills.
Yeah,
and he and I were and still are very good friends, and did a show together. Anyway, we were chatting away, and he said, "Listen, I'm hosting this charity ball for cancer research and whatnot in Manchester." He goes, "I've got a table if you want to come." And I was a bit like, "Why not? Do you know what? I can probably make about 3 days out of that one overnight. I'll sort of have a travel day and then a travel back day, and go and sit on his sofa and watch Homes Under the Hammer just as a change of scenery." And so I did, and being sat on this table and talking to various people. Anyway, I got talking to this guy who worked for cancer research and was saying, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. But I guess something to do. I've met lots of people over the years. I've met lots of different contacts, which are useful.
Yeah.
So maybe something to do with that. So he goes, I think you could do a job for us. Anyway, so cut long story short, I then had another meeting back in London, and I went and worked for Cancer Research as what they called a talent consultant. So using contacts to do stuff. So, for example, if they wanted to do a fundraising charity night or whatever, I kind of say, oh, that's fine, because I know Joe Wilkinson, I know David Hill, so they could come and compare it, right? Or whatever. Or, and it was that kind of thing. I know Fern Cotton. No, I know. I mean, it was all hypothetical.
Well, what date are we talking about? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not gig strong.
I'm still available.
Yeah. Joe doesn't do charity events, do you? Not that.
Well, yeah, I'm not big on charity. Yeah.
So that was I suppose the beginning of some kind of structure again. And sort of, having a reason to get up in the morning, and then since then it's been a sort of steady climb back up, and I'm now in a position where, I'm happy. I'm working for a production company. I make podcasts for a living, essentially. Pretty much.
Brilliant.
And do podcasts and do video production and whatnot as well. So that's what I do. And
so when you say you make podcasts, what is your role now? So do you
producer?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't do anything creative like you two. I don't originate it. I just I normally sit where I am now, and I'm normally pressing record.
When I used to listen to the radio shows, you were the voice that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, me too.
And I think it's because, like Joe said, it felt like you weren't trying.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So well,
thank you. That's a huge compliment, by the way. That's I'm chuffed with that.
Well, we were so excited to get I think because it was such a point in our lives as well, where we were at a certain age where we felt really sort of, I said earlier, like rudderless or whatever, and
we're the same age as well, I suppose, and I think that's also sort of part of it.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But it was such a big part of my life listening to you talk on the radio. It's sort of it does remind me. I know exactly where I was.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that, and people say that, and it's like that's kind of the biggest compliment, but I can totally understand that feeling of being stuck in traffic on the M62 and listening to that episode of whatever it was, because I had that short period of time where I did that with Chris Evans. So that was my. So when I'd sit there in traffic waiting, I say at that same point every day at 8:35 or whatever, waiting for the bloody lights to change. And you would look, something would happen and you'd laugh, and then you'd look in your rear view mirror, and then you'd see the lady behind you laughing, and then you'd see the guy in the van behind her laughing. And it was that really wonderful shared experience, in the same way that people would say to us when we used to do stuff involving honking your horns and stuff like that. And people kind of go, at that point in the song where you sort of said everybody kind of go, everybody in traffic on the M62 or on the M11 or whatever was doing that at that point, and it's that lovely shared experience where you look around and you kind of go, we're all part of the same club. And I think that in essence was what it was all about.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question, which is related to sort of related to the radio show, but me and Joe are obsessed with TFI Friday.
Oh Jesus!
So was I.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing of there's a party,
and I want to be there.
And I'm a million
so bad. But
did you ever go on it?
No, I didn't. No, I never went on it. Never went to it. I know where it was filmed,
Riverside Studios,
and absolutely. And I have been to the Riverside Studios for other stuff, and looked out, and kind of thought, oh, that's where they used to look out on the balcony and whatever, Werther's is a good friend of mine who worked on the show as he was sort of Chris Evans' sort of sidekick and whatnot, and but weirdly, even knowing him, I never got down there. But it was that thing.
You were in showbiz at the time, weren't you? You were doing the radio.
No, do you know what? It was kind of just before us, really.
Oh, okay.
Because TFI was more 95, 96.
God.
And so it was actually a bit before, our heyday, if you like.
Yeah.
And I think really by the time we got into our stride
when you were bookable.
When we were bookable, I think it was probably over. I can't remember when it finished, but it was that thing whereby, still to this day, there's something really special about a Friday, I think. And that was what was so clever about it, is that it tapped into that magical time of the week.
It did, 6, 7 o'clock or whatever.
Absolutely. Or 5, 6, 7 o'clock on a Friday is the best time of the week because you've got all a Friday night to look forward to. You've got the whole weekend to look forward to.
Yeah.
And there's no better time. And to actually have the show at that point, at whatever it was, 6 o'clock, wasn't it, on a Friday night?
6, yeah.
And it was just like, this is the best thing in the world. You get home from work and you sit on the sofa and you might crack a beer and you would be part of this.
And you'd wonder how you got on that mezzanine.
Yeah, how did you get on that mezzanine?
How do I pat Gordon Ramsay on the back as he walks past on his way to that desk?
That looked really uncomfortable because it wasn't that wide, was it? And so the people on the mezzanine had to sort of stand there with their back right to the wall, as Sean Ryder or Gordon Ramsay or whoever would walk past. But they were obviously the people that didn't get there early enough to get into the actual studio.
Yeah,
I'd happily be mezzanine boy every week.
I'd have been mezzanine.
Because they came out the door and there was always 3 or 4 just to the right of the door. Then a big gap and then it started again. I'd happily be one of those 3 by the door. I'd have opened
it. Was magic though, wasn't it? It was magic.
It was.
But it was. I think it was of its time.
Yeah. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it now.
Well, they tried to, didn't they? They tried to bring it back a few years ago, and they tried to tap into it. And it certainly wasn't awful by any stretch, but it wasn't. There was something about the age that we all were.
Oh God!
At the time, it was the music. Everything felt quite cool and rock and roll, and it was absolutely of its moment.
It was a bit weird watching it back because I watched it back the other day. I was like, God, there's a lot of guff, isn't there? It's just sort of like it was just a lot of filler, wasn't it? A lot of that. And you're like, 40% of this show is cheering.
Yeah, but you're 47 now, Joe.
Yeah, I know, and I cheer less. But God, I wanted to cheer on that mezzanine.
I cheer less.
As a rule, every year it goes down a bit.
I would like to see a graph, Joe, of your cheering scale.
I don't think it's been that
from
high.
From about 97 on.
97, he was fantastic.
I don't remember lowering my arms in the 97. They were not waist high once.
Oh, God.
Well, Dave, that was brilliant.
Thank you so much, Dave, for coming
on. It's my
on.
pleasure. Thank you.
You're a massive hero of ours, so this is massive.
I genuinely, sorry, this sounds like a bit of I can't believe you say that, genuinely, and I'm not trying to be, overly modest or anything. It's like, because as I say, I'm that bloke that talks shit on the radio for years, and now I watch you two on TV, and then I'm like, well, I'm chuffed to bits the fact that you wanted us to come on here, but thank you.
You should get those dulcet tones on a podcast or something.
Yeah, definitely.
I do one that I talk on.
Oh, really?
We do it. Yeah, it's called Fueling Around. It's like a petrol head sort of motoring one, and it's me and a racing driver guy called Jason Plato, and we basically have celebrity petrol heads come on, and we just talk cars and shit like that with them for about 45 minutes. So I do that, but no. Otherwise, I'm. Do you know what? Since the pandemic, I sit in my converted box room and I sit here and I've got everything I need, and I just I make podcasts, and it's great, and I don't have to get on the tube, and I don't have to spend 30 quid getting to London and back, and I don't have to spend a £5 on a sandwich.
Honestly, well, since we've started doing this, God, it's getting to the point where we could finish at 10 a.m.
Yeah, we're talking about that too much. Talking about how I can't believe
how early you did. Why do you record it so early?
Oh, don't. This is we had this.
We wanted a breakfast show on a podcast
because of you, basically.
So we wanted to create that thing of, if you want to listen to a show every day, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, there's one there for you.
You should have gone into full character and actually you should have recorded this at 6:30 every morning.
Honestly.
Well, do you know what? For 2.5 months. We did.
And then halfway through, you're going to go, what the fuck are we doing?
Sorry. Could have done this at midday.
Up at 5:30?
Honestly, honestly, don't.
That's one thing we wanted to get that across, that we wanted to do a daily breakfast show.
Yeah.
And if we felt like shit, to really sit there in silence.
And
because I always found it just incredible that radio broadcasters would have all this energy, and I would wonder they go through like tricky moments in their life and still have to perform.
Madness.
You do. I mean, I can.
That's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I can say from first hand. We all go through tricky times. We all go through, shit in our lives and whatnot. But you still have to put the mask on. And you still have to do it.
Well, we don't on this.
I just sniff. Basically, and then get people tweeting the following day going, "Can you sniff less?" Which I refuse to do. Well, we've taken
Thank you so much, Dave. Really
it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
A million thanks. Brilliant.
It's just nice to meet you both as well.
Oh, ditto. Yeah.
It's weird actually because I was going to. Oh, can I ask you a couple of afterlife questions before we go?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It's because I've been watching because I used to live in Beaconsfield. And so a lot of it's filmed around there. And then before that, years and years ago, I used to live in North London near Hampstead as well.
Oh, blimey.
So I'm watching this kind of thinking, this is weird. This program is sort of following me around. Are they choosing their filming locations?
Most of it was filmed near Reading as well.
Oh, really?
No, I'm joking. There was actually. There was. The fair was filmed near Reading. So
I'm watching it the other night and I'm thinking, I know that crossing because that's by the National Film and Television School, and like literally on that next road that he turned. You know when he throws the cactus through the back window, and then I'm like, my daughter's school is literally over there. I sit there at school pickup and where's his house? Is that in Hampstead?
Yeah, it's on up
the top.
No, it's by the. Where I can't remember the name of the road. It's basically. I'll email it to you. I can't remember. What's it? It's gonna. The Vale of Health. Vale of Health.
Yes. Yeah. I know where.
Yeah. The office exteriors are like old Hemel Hempstead, aren't they? Yeah.
Do you know, I weirdly, and I used to park my car on the Vale of Health many moons ago because when I first moved to London and I was driving an old Cortina at the time, which is very showbiz, and I lived about 15, 20 minutes walk away from there, down the hill, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it was all residence parking. And you couldn't park anywhere, and the nearest place that I could park was that Vale of Health.
Because it's a bit hidden, isn't it? It's a bit
hidden. It's down a hill, isn't it? Down the bottom. In fact, I think Nicky Campbell used to live there.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Possibly. And so it's down there, and I used to park there, so I know exactly where you mean. Because I was looking at the exterior of the house, thinking I've seen that place before, and I couldn't work out. But now, you're right.
Fancy,
I'm going back about
Fancy Dan down there.
Fancy Dan, expensive money, isn't it?
Yeah, in Beaconsfield, we filmed like the big sort of stand-up comedy night in series 2 in some I think the church is in Beaconsfield as well.
Yeah. No, it's weird watching it, as I say, and
the location guy is obviously a big fan of yours.
Or lives locally.
You'll have some crew coming in your room in a minute.
So we're just doing a podcast,
putting down tracks and laying cable or whatever. Laying cable sounds wrong, but you know what I mean.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you, and it would be really nice to. Hopefully, one day we might meet in real life.
I'd love
as well.
Yeah, keep in touch.
In fact, do you know what we should do? Should we go to the Horse and Groom?
100%.
Why don't we go to the Horse and Groom and we'll go and sit at the back by where the pinball machine used to be and smoke. And I'll meet you there at 11:25, and we'll leave at half.
Let's record a podcast, a live podcast.
Yes, and then we'll get the number 73 bus home to Stoke Newington, even though none of us live there.
Perfect.
That's a great idea.
I'm going to make this happen. You're joining a WhatsApp group, whether you like it.
We're going to do a live podcast, which is your life after the breakfast show.
You're on. Let's do it.
Brilliant.
Cheers, Dave.
Right, cheers, boys.
Look after
you
later. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.